In my opinion, protein is going to be the most important macronutrient for virtually everybody's health and fitness goals. For one, protein is going to help you improve your body composition in a lot of different ways. So, protein is necessary for recovery and growth. And by that, I mean, when you train hard or when you get into the gym and you lift weights, or if you go out and you go for a run, really anything like that, what happens when you exercise is in some form or fashion, you are going to be breaking down and taxing your muscles, your muscles throughout your body, depending on what you train that day. And when that happens, the first thing your body wants to do is find a way to recover and get you back to baseline, get you back to homeostasis, because the body always wants to be as efficient as it possibly can be. And the body is at its most efficient when it's at homeostasis. So when something causes your body to not be at homeostasis, then it does whatever it has to do to get you there. And another, I guess comparable example could be, if you're sick. When you're sick, the vast majority of your body's resources, its internal resources, go to trying to get you back to baseline, trying to get you as healthy, trying to get you healthy as quickly as it possibly can. So training is kind of the same thing. Protein is really necessary to help aid your body in that process. So when you think about exercising, if you haven't exercised before and then you dive into a program that has strength training, that has cardio, that has, a combination of different modes of exercise, your body is going to want to react to that pretty quickly. And a way that it can react is by trying to build muscle to essentially, the body wants to be as efficient as it possibly can be. So what will often happen is you lift weights, you haven't done that before, and your body's like, okay, your brain signals to your body, well, that was difficult. So the next time we do that, we need to be better prepared for it. And the processes that happen, and again, I said we're not going to get too sciencey here, so we're breaking it down to the basics. The processes that happen are essentially your body builds some muscle to help you be more efficient at that activity the next time you do it. So protein is very important to help with recovery from any type of exercise program that you would be doing. It's also very valuable from a weight loss perspective, because if you think about that, building muscle, protein can also help you maintain muscle mass. And something that's interesting that happens when you go into a calorie deficit to lose weight is that, your body doesn't only lose muscle mass, it doesn't always lose fat mass all the time. You can also lose weight from muscle mass. But if you have a higher protein diet, you'll be giving your body a lot of what it needs to maintain that muscle mass. Because I think most people that go to lose weight don't think like, well, I want to lose 20 pounds of muscle. I don't think that that's normally the case. Normally, people want to lose body fat. So protein can help you lose weight in ways that you actually want to. And it also happens to be the most filling macronutrient there is. So foods that are very high in protein are going to help you feel more full after you eat them. And if you're consistently having high protein meals, you will consistently feel more full, and that will make it a lot easier for you to be in a calorie deficit and stick to your diet for longer. And if you're in a calorie deficit for longer, a long-term calorie deficit typically leads to pretty dramatic progress. When you're feeling full, the whole process doesn't feel as awful. So there's a lot of benefits to having protein in your diet, and a high protein diet, as consistently as you can. And again, that's really independent of the type of fitness goal that you have. The protein brings with it amino acids. And this is as sciencey as I will get for protein here. But amino acids are the building blocks that your body needs and uses to actually build muscle tissue. So when you're providing your body with those amino acids, then you're giving your body the building blocks it needs to either maintain muscle or build muscle. When we're talking about protein, it's actually the only macronutrient that's not going to directly correlate to energy for your performance in the gym or your performance going out for a run or hopping on the bike or, really doing any type of exercise. It doesn't play a primary role in giving you the energy to do those workouts. Its primary role is more or less what happens after the workout and the recovery process. But don't get it twisted. The importance of protein is still very high. And like I said at the beginning of this section, I find protein to be the most important macronutrient for anybody to focus on. Now, let's talk about protein intake because everybody probably has an ideal amount of protein that you could eat each day. And fact of the matter is that total is going to be different for each and every person. So your ideal amount of protein per day is going to be different than mine and different from somebody else that's listening. But we all do have a ballpark best or optimal or ideal amount of protein to consume each day. And I'll give you some strategies here on how to figure out what your ideal protein intake can or should be. So a very popular recommendation that you may have heard before is 1 gram of protein per pound of your body weight. And I do think that that's a really easy one, which is why I like it. It's really easy to calculate. Right now, as I'm recording this, I'm 168 pounds. So that would mean eating 168 grams of protein would give my body everything it needs. Now there is, and so that could very well work for you. I will say it comes with a caveat, and I would say this works really well for people who are at or around a healthy body weight, or even if you are slightly overweight. The more overweight, or if you venture into being obese, the more overweight or obese that you are, the less effective this strategy becomes. Because if you're 300 pounds, if you're 5'10", 300 pounds, that's kind of overkill. It's kind of overkill for you to eat 300 grams of protein. Can you? Yeah, sure, you absolutely can. Will it help you feel full? Will it help give your body everything it needs to recover? Absolutely. And it's not like, hey, protein's important, so more is better. More is good to a certain extent, and then it kind of becomes like, okay, you could reallocate calories to other macronutrients to be more effective. I'll give you the strategy that I really like to use. And I use this with all my clients in terms of, where we set their top end, like, hey, your ideal amount of protein is this. What I do with my clients is 1 gram of protein per centimeter of your height. So I think I'm 180 centimeters tall. So I try to get 180 grams of protein in each day. So whatever your height is in inches, like an easy way to do it is just go into Google, type in inches to centimeter, and Google will give you a calculator where you can just plug in how many inches tall you are, and it'll tell you how many centimeters that is. And then that would be your optimal or ideal top level. Hey, this is the best number that you could use to eat this amount of protein every day. The last thing I'll say in terms of protein recommendations, the daily amount that you should eat, is that these are big numbers, I think, for most people. So 180 grams of protein, 168 grams of protein, or whatever it may end up being for you if you plug these numbers in and figure out your protein goal. These are probably going to be big numbers for you because in general, nowadays, most people just don't eat enough protein, and that's a fact. And the guidelines for Americans and I think in other countries as well, in terms of how much protein you should eat, is kind of laughable. To be honest with you, it's very, very low, and I think it's very, very low because most people eat so little protein to begin with. So what I often do with my clients, and this could be beneficial for you, is that while we may know, like, okay, I'm working with John and his ideal protein intake is 180 grams of protein a day, but John right now eats 75 grams of protein a day. What I will do with John in this case is say, okay, what we're going to do is start with 100 grams of protein a day. Start with something that's slightly above how much protein you eat right now. And then we'll slowly and incrementally try and tick that number up over time. Because if you go from eating like 75 grams of protein a day to 180, you're probably going to, it's going to be a big shock to your system. So it's probably going to be more beneficial for you to slowly work that number up over time, not deal with like massive amounts of GI distress and whatnot. Since, you're, even though you're not at your optimal or ideal protein intake, by slowly and incrementally bumping that number up, you're going to be slowly and incrementally giving your body more protein. And by doing that, your body will adapt in the ways that you want it to, okay? And that will become more and more beneficial the more you tick that number up over time. So those are some ways to figure out what's going to be best for you. But like I said, there is going to be probably a cap. More isn't necessarily better, which is why I talked about like, here's your ideal amount. And we talked about with that like example, 300-pound person, their ideal number may actually be like 180 because when you're increasing protein, you give your body what it needs, what it wants and what it needs to recover. But then if you're getting into numbers that are excess, what you're actually doing is taking calories away from carbohydrates and fats, which could provide your body with more energy to perform better in the gym. And if you can perform better in the gym, then you can see more, progress in the gym by seeing, you're doing more reps or you're lifting more weight. Your workload is going up over time. You're progressively overloading your muscles. And that's actually going to lead you to make more progress and improve your body composition more because, you're giving your body not only all the protein it needs, but at the same time, the carbohydrates and fats and the extra energy that your body needs to train hard. Okay. So there is, for most people, a process you need to go through to continue to bump protein up over time, but you will, if you do it for long enough and you get to that optimal intake, you will get to a point where you can probably put a cap on protein and then try to build your diet with carbohydrates and fats to provide your body with the energy it wants and needs to actually train hard and perform well. Okay, so timing with protein is also, I think, a popular topic, and I want to walk you through that as well. So timing of protein can play a role in how your body recovers and adapts to exercise. But at the end of the day, hitting a daily number is going to be the most effective approach. And however you hit that daily number is typically fine as long as you hit that number each day. You don't really need to get super into the weeds about protein timing if you're just getting started with setting a protein goal and trying to hit it. It can make a small impact to, maybe have equal amounts of protein spaced throughout the day to consistently be giving your body the amino acids, right, that it needs to do all of these processes that we've talked about. But like there's a lot of sports science research on this at this point that shows the difference between doing whatever might be quote unquote optimal with your protein intake and comparing that to just hitting a number each day. And that could mean like, hey, you don't have much protein for breakfast or lunch, but then you have a high protein dinner and a high protein snack, and you end up hitting your protein goal, even though it was kind of like backloaded. You had way more protein in the back half of the day than the beginning. The research shows that the difference between those two is so unbelievably minimal that like, if you're not an athlete, you really don't need to be worried about it. And the vast majority of people who listen to my podcast are like working moms and dads and people that just want to live healthy. So I think for you, just hitting that goal is going to be the most important for you. There have been like these claims about like, hey, okay, after you work out, you have to have a protein shake within a half hour. This was categorized as the quote unquote anabolic window, where after you train, your body's just dying for protein. So you have to have protein right after you work out so that it can like absorb right into your muscles and you'll build muscle instantly. And that was a great way to sell whey protein supplements back in the day. So credit to the protein and supplement companies for coming up with that type of marketing. It worked for a really long time until we found out that like research on that topic has also just shown that as long as you hit your daily total, you'll build just as much muscle as you would if you smash like 50 grams of protein on your way out of the gym. It really doesn't matter. So you don't need to be super worried about that. Again, if you're an athlete, like it might be different. You maybe should focus a bit more on having protein right after you train. But for the average Joe or Jane, like you can just have that protein throughout the day when it works for you. And as long as you're hitting your protein goal, you'll be all good. There are a couple times a day that I think are really good to get your protein in. And they're pretty straightforward. Like in the morning, I think is a really good time of day to have some type of high protein meal. And that could be like having a shake in the morning to help easily get 20 to 25 grams of protein in your system. But you know, when you've been sleeping for 7 to 8 hours, a night, essentially your body is fasting, right? Because breakfast is called breakfast because you're breaking a fast. So, waking up and having some protein is generally pretty beneficial for people because you've been fasting. Your body, if you just trained the day before, probably could really use a nice dose of protein to start the day. So that's typically a best practice. And I know that doesn't fit some diets like intermittent fasting and stuff like that, but I've just found it as a coach to work really well for a lot of people. And then before bed. I think before bed is another one that's important because you're about to go into a 7 or 8 hour window where you're not going to be having any type of nutrition coming into your system. So if you can get some protein in before you go to bed, it'll just give your body a bit of what it needs and some of the amino acids it can utilize while you sleep. A lot of our recovery from training actually happens while sleeping. So to be able to get protein in before bed, it's just, again, a best practice, something that probably would benefit you. But again, at the end of the day, timing isn't as big of a deal as hitting that daily goal. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with protein is supplementation and how to get your protein. Like what sources should your protein be coming from? The majority of your daily protein, if you can, and if it aligns with the way that you prefer to eat, should be coming from animal protein. Like if you don't have any restrictions on the type of foods that you can eat, animal protein is the highest quality protein and gives your body all of the amino acids that it needs to actually build and repair muscle. So I always encourage people, get the majority of it from animal protein if you can. Supplements also can play a role. Whey isolate protein is the most complete supplement that you can have. And so if you can work that into your diet as well. That's a really handy, easy, convenient way to get some protein in throughout the day. I always have one shake in the morning just because it starts my day off right. I'll get like 50 grams of protein as part of my breakfast, and it makes hitting my protein goal pretty easy throughout the day each day because I start with a nice dose of protein. So supplements are okay. If you can't eat animal protein or you choose not to, there are different supplements that you can take. There are a lot of different foods in the vegan or vegetarian diet that can help you get a lot of protein. The problem with plant-based protein, though, is that you're not going to be getting all of the amino acids that you need. Plant proteins have amino acids, but they're not complete proteins, which means you would need to supplement with some type of vegan protein powder, branched chain amino acids, different things like that to help you get all of the amino acids your body needs to build muscle. So there would be some necessary supplementation there if you are a plant-based diet. But if you don't have those restrictions, eat a lot of animal protein, find a lot of different ways you can dress up meals that adds protein, like throwing cheese on there or beans, snacks like cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, oats. All these things have a decent amount of protein in them, and then you can supplement as well. Protein is, again, the most important macronutrient for virtually any type of fitness goal. So I hope that this was beneficial.